Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, we are getting ready to set out for Maryland, lovely Maryland. But before we can get to the news of the weekend, we need to start with the news of the day, which was, Tom, there's always something at Ohio State. We saw that this summer. We're seeing it now. Of course, today I am referring to the Brett McMurphy story of a heated exchange between Zach Smith and former Buckeye Trayvon Grimes back in 2017 that included a racial slur, which, and I'm sure by now everybody knows that story. It seems like many months ago, but it was actually just Sunday, Tom, that I was at the basketball game and, on press row with everybody else. We're trying to watch Ohio State and Purdue Fort Wayne, and then Zach Smith started tweeting. And so at that point, everybody is pretty much watching Twitter instead of watching the game. And that was a pretty crazy thing to watch unfold, and yet it was just a few days ago now, and it seems like forever ago, because stuff like what we saw today happens way too often than it should, especially with Brett McMurphy. And I guess we should just go ahead and start talking about this. What did you think when you first read the story today?
When I first read the tweet, I thought,
yes.
"Oh, this is significant. This is going to be a thing." And you started reading the story, and it was like, okay. And then you didn't have to go that far into it to kind of go, this may be one of these all hat, no cattle kind of things where you've got a real spicy tweet, and then as soon as you get about 6 inches down the story, you're like, oh, if you actually had anything, I would have read it already. And as you kept going, it was kind of like, okay, you really don't have anything. Okay, now this is, now you're basically contradicting the premise of your article with things that you've written later in the article. Like, okay, so this is now not a thing. And it was pretty clear pretty quickly that it wasn't a thing. Like, I read it and thought, maybe I'm missing something. And I went and I looked, and all the people who have been kind of cheerleading his reporting all year and talking about what a great job he's doing on all the stories this summer. I mean, if you're listening to this, you probably know the national people I'm thinking of when I say that. None of those people were saying that this time. And so you kind of went, okay, so maybe this really is as much of a nothing burger as it seems like. And then the Ohio State tweets started coming, and it was like, oh, this is not going the way that he thought it was going to go.
We're eventually going to have to write about it, the story, but I didn't really know like the right angle to take with it. But once Ohio State came out, once the players came out in full force denying it, and then at that point it was, the story here is that everything that looks shady in McMurphy's story is apparently incorrect based on the actual eyewitnesses at Ohio State, if you are to believe them, rather than somebody who was told something who then tells something to Brett McMurphy. And I'll go back to what you said. The original tweet that Brett McMurphy tweeted out of his story reads this way: multiple sources told At Watch Stadium that Urban Meyer helped cover up a racially charged practice altercation between former assistant Zach Smith and former Buckeye Trayvon Grimes in 2017. Ohio State admits, quote-unquote, interaction between Smith and Grimes, but denies racial slur. You read that, and the key words here are Urban Meyer, cover up, racially charged practice altercation. And then you read the story, and you read not the main source of the story is Trayvon Grimes' estranged father, who Grimes says, or Florida says, that Grimes hasn't talked to in 2 years, McMurphy's gotcha on that, however, is that he's got phone records showing that they've talked twice in the last, in that time frame for a total of about 14 minutes. I don't know how great of a gotcha that is, especially considering, we're only getting one side of the story of who's being talked to. But there was so much, and even in the story, throughout the story, Brett McMurphy is contradicting what LeBron Grimes, the father, is saying. And it was just so, it was like there's a lot of it. And it's the Gumbies of investigative reporting. But the way I framed it, I don't know if I tweeted this or I wrote it, but he spent a long time on this because he had been going back on this since September. But he couldn't report it as having actually happened this way. He had to report it as, this is what people are telling me. This is my journey. This is my story of trying to find out why Trayvon Grimes transferred from Ohio State. And we'll get back to that. But my other question is, who cares about why one particular player transferred from a college when it happens, I don't know, 100 times, maybe 50 to 100 times a year in each conference? What makes this one player so special, other than the fact that there are some salacious details in here, and it obviously involves Brett McMurphy's two favorite people, Zach Smith and Urban Meyer, and you just read it all, and you just feel like you need a shower after it. And you wonder, like, how did this get okay to be published? And I keep going back to the fact that McMurphy isn't saying this happened. He's just saying this is what somebody said happened, which is really just, it's storytelling at that point.
He went on 105.7, one of the sports radio stations in Columbus this afternoon.
610.
And, was it 610? Okay, it was 610. Okay. My apologies. It was on 610. The host asked him, why did you write this if people on half the side are saying this is not happening? And he basically said, are you a reporter? You if you knew what reporting was, you wouldn't have asked that question. I think at this point I have some sense what reporting is, and reporting saying secondhand information that no one who was there at the time is saying was that what actually happened. You're just reporting secondhand that this is what someone who didn't go on the record, just someone who's a background source for me on this, said that they heard someone say that this is what happened. And then you go and you have firm denials from the other side. That's not reporting. That's not like you called it a choose your own adventure today on your, if you believe LeBron Grimes, turn to page 29. If you believe everyone else, turn to page 47. That's not reporting. That's just throwing something out there, and then to in that radio interview say, I'm not saying any of this. People are saying this to me. Like, yeah, I can get people to say lots of stuff to me. I could get someone to say to me that Brett McMurphy was lurking in the bushes outside of an elementary school, and I can't report that because I don't have anything to corroborate it. And even his mustache. I mean, maybe his mustache would corroborate that, but you can't just throw something out there like that and just kind of have little stringy bits of not much to sort of, well, I have a plane ticket that shows that he went to Columbus. Well, that proves everything then. Like, that doesn't corroborate. You don't have any firsthand witnesses to this. You don't have any documentation to back this up. You just kind of threw it against the wall to see what would stick. And to see the response from other national reporters, which was basically not a response,
Correct.
And to see the response from Ohio State, which was, both guns out of the holster, blazing from just about everyone today. I think there's a pretty good chance that he got this one extremely, extremely, extremely wrong, because this was not the Ohio State response to a lot of stuff this summer. They I think there's an argument to be made that the university was a little too passive in its response to a lot of the reporting this summer and waited too long and didn't respond. And it was today, it was players tweeting, it was University President Michael Drake, it was OSU Athletic Director Gene Smith, it was Urban Meyer. Everyone was out, guns blazing. And that is, I do not think Brett McMurphy is probably going to sleep real well tonight on Tuesday night after that day and after that response.
And it was also like OSU staffers retweeting other people talking about how ridiculous this was. I think Mark Pantoni retweeted you. Then Urban Meyer on the Big Ten teleconference today was not happy at all. He said everybody, and this was something else that Ryan Day said as well on Tuesday night. Like everybody, once they heard that this was going on, because they heard about the story was coming last week, then once they heard what the story was, they were irate that somebody would be saying that this happened in the Ohio State University walls, and that's when you had the receivers coming out and saying, I was there, none of that happened, or none of those words happened. Yeah, there was an altercation, a verbal altercation or whatever. And like McMurphy is using, like, I guess Ohio State denied anything happened initially. Then they went and did some research and found out, okay, there was an argument and they had to be separated. And he's like, aha, told you. And it's like, well, that's one minor detail compared to go back to your original tweet. It wasn't about, the altercation was lower in the word order. Up top, it was Urban Meyer cover up. And for racially, insensitive remarks. And never mind that got completely dismissed by the players, but he's claiming victory because, Ohio State said there was nothing and there was something. But the nothing and the something are completely different than the something that McMurphy was reporting, or not reporting. He was just saying what somebody was saying that Zach Smith said. Because remember, in all of this, I'm not saying this. I'm not reporting this. I'm just reporting what somebody said was said. And that is just such garbage. And Urban Meyer then on Tuesday said that he's going to be looking into legal action. I have not stayed at a Holiday Inn Express of late, so I don't know exactly. I mean, you can sue for anything, so there could be that. But again, he's trying to protect himself by saying, well, I'm not reporting this. I'm not reporting that Zach Smith did this. I'm reporting that somebody is saying that he said this. And I don't know how protected he is in that way. There's still this, I guess we would call it a falsehood, being reported or thrown out there. And we talked earlier, Ohio State may want to look into a lawsuit, Tom, but then there's also the discovery process, which they may not want to get into.
Yeah, I don't know that Ohio State's necessarily going to want to go through the legal process with this, but they certainly could if they wanted to. I mean, the legal standard, going back to my journalism law class days, was because Urban Meyer is a public figure, because Zach Smith is a public figure, the legal threshold to prove libel is actual malice, which basically means you have to prove that the person meant to knowingly publish false information to, with the intent of defaming you and harming your reputation. And that's a very high threshold to meet. That is legally a very difficult threshold to meet. There is a case you could make that this does at least approach that level, and that it's worth looking into. I don't know that Ohio State actually is going to, or Urban Meyer is actually going to pursue legal action against them. But with as high as that threshold is, the reporting was reckless enough and unsubstantiated enough in all of the most important and most salacious areas that I think you could look into this. Because, I mean, like you said, he's kind of claiming victory that, well, Ohio State said nothing happened, and then Ohio State said there was an argument. Well, okay, there's a long distance between an argument and a physical altercation with racial slurs being used. That's because the first one is not a story. Coaches and
Yep.
players get in arguments on every single college campus, every single day at practice. That's nothing new. To have a physical altercation, that would be something. To have a racial slur used, that would be something. But to think that it's some kind of a victory for Ohio State to say, yeah, they got in an argument, and for all of the witnesses to say they got in an argument and that was it. I mean, congratulations, you just reported nothing. And you made it sound as if it was something big. And given some of his actions over the summer with regard to Urban Meyer, putting an Urban Meyer quote in his Twitter bio and putting the picture of the Urban Meyer rally as his Twitter header during the summer, I mean, it would be, he got real indignant on Columbus radio tonight at the idea that this was some sort of a personal anything. And he, oh no, this is something I would do with anyone. And I think that if you look at how he has approached the Urban Meyer, Urban Meyer as a person and Urban Meyer as an issue and as a reporting target this year, I think you would be hard pressed to find someone else that he has approached in that way.
And I believe on that interview, he also said if Urban Meyer was no longer the head coach at Ohio State, he wouldn't have run this story. So then it's like, well, your purpose is to then actually, like you said, it's to harm Urban Meyer, or else why is it a lesser story if Urban Meyer is, I guess, no longer there? Isn't it still, I mean, didn't he still do this? If what you're saying is so important, why does it matter if he's no longer at Ohio State? So obviously it seems like it would be a heck of a feather in the cap to be the guy that got rid of Urban Meyer, and it doesn't look like that's going to happen. Although if Urban Meyer retires this year, I wouldn't be surprised if he went ahead and claimed some sort of victory there. It's just it's just so dirty. And the way that Ohio State reacted from the top down tells you that they're tired of it. They're tired of him. And also that they don't believe that any of that happened. And the way that they portrayed Urban Meyer going to Florida to see Trayvon Grimes and his mom, Leah, with Tate Martell and Jalen Harris in tow and somebody else, maybe, I don't know if Gene Smith was there, but like this clandestine meeting to negotiate basically a buyout for Trayvon Grimes' silence. Like, okay, and this is not what Brett McMurphy is reporting. This is just what he was told. But it's basically like they go down there to negotiate his silence, and they bought his silence by allowing him to play right away and not challenging, the waiver or anything like that. And he's painting all of these, like, he's putting the numbers for paint by number. He's doing most of the painting. He's not doing all of the painting, but you see enough of the picture that he's trying to put forward. And you're like, this is really shady. And then the story gets to where, he's intimating that Trayvon Grimes' mom is faking, or that he's not saying this, but he's, like I said, he's intimating that there may be some sort of faking of cancer. And you're just like, how do you move forward on this story? How do you get the green light for it? And who is making the decisions? And this is, but then the thing is, Tom, this is great for the stadium, whatever it is, the Watch Stadium or the stadium.com that he works for, because every time he does something like this, it gets huge traffic for them. I meant to check this out, but I guess if you go to the website and you check his bylines, somebody on the Ozone Forum posted that he's got 36 stories posted there. 5 of them I think are investigative, and all 5 are about Ohio State. So maybe it's not a vendetta. Maybe it's just, he has family in the area and he just likes being in Columbus.
Who doesn't?
Yeah.
It's a growing metropolitan area. While you were talking, I thought, I wonder what Michigan sites are saying about this, because there was a certain gleeful
Uh-huh.
repeating of everything that he was reporting all summer, and immediate credibility to all of it. I just went to MGO blog to see what they wrote today about it, and the headline is, quote, "Who can know," close quote, "should maybe get spiked. Brett McMurphy's latest foray into the Zach Smith swamp probably shouldn't have been published, which you can tell just by the headline. The search for the truth about Trayvon Grimes' transfer from Ohio State to Florida. It's never good when the search for precedes the truth."
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that's, he went on Columbus Radio today, and when the host asked him, what would you have this issue with my reporting if this was about Michigan, and the host waited half a second before answering, and McMurphy jumped on it like, haha. Yeah. So that means, yeah. Well, okay, so now Michigan, one of probably the premier Michigan site is looking at your reporting about their arch rival and saying, yeah, this is kind of a big steaming pile of crap. So, okay, so if one of them proved your point, then the opposite should therefore completely disprove you and discredit you, right? That's how this works?
Exactly. And listening to that interview, I mean, he did get argumentative, and when he asked if this was about a Michigan, would you have the same like anger? And the host was saying like, I wouldn't know the story, basically trying to say like, I wouldn't know the story as well. I wouldn't be as ingrained to it. So I wouldn't care whether or not it was accurate. But when, you're talking, when you're writing a story about my family, yeah, I'm going to know about it, and I'm going to have feelings about it. If you're writing about some family from Michigan, I don't care. I don't care what's going on there. Story may be lie, maybe not. I don't know, because I'm not emotionally attached. I'm not going to look into it. But when you come after something that the host, is entwined with and is a fan of, yeah, you're going to catch his ears better that way. And so, McMurphy that was another gotcha for him. And it was, and then at the end, McMurphy's like, well, I've got another radio interview. So, goodbye. And there were times throughout the interview where McMurphy was just like so incredulous that he was being challenged this way. And there was an argumentative tone from the host. And it's like 13 minutes. I'd say go give it a listen. I don't know if it's on their site or not, but the last line of the piece is, it says as much as the first paragraph, but the last line is, "What is the truth? It depends whom you ask." And he's treating that like, I just told you what they told me. You decide on your own, even though you know exactly what he wants your decision to be, because that's what he tweeted out. That was, he tweeted out that Urban Meyer helped cover up a racially charged practice altercation. And multiple sources told him that. And yet, at the end of his piece, he discredits his own sources by saying, who is to believe whom? Who knows what the actual truth is, except for the fact that you say sources tell him that Urban Meyer helped cover up. And nowhere in that tweet is there like, I can't say that these sources are reliable, that you're going to have to decide for that. You read that tweet and you're like, well, he obviously believes his sources. And if that's all you read and you don't read the story, then you've drawn your conclusion, or other people have drawn their conclusion like, yep, more Ohio State crookedness. I knew it. And then you read the story, and the whole time he's telling you why this is probably incorrect. But the people who are like devouring this, that's like broccoli to them. They're just going to push that off and keep, cutting up the steak and, get this garnish out of here. I want more ridiculous details. And then I guess today Dan Dakich tweeted that Trayvon Grimes' mom lost her job today because of this story. And it's so like, why this guy has a solid job and he is trying to take people down. Like, what kind of job is that? What, you've made it. You are a well-known college football reporter. Now he's at a new site that needs more eyeballs than it has. And so maybe this is the way that they're going about it. But you're leaving a path of destruction in your wake that is larger than any impact that he should be having on people. And it's unfortunate for the people that he chooses to write about. And he has no consideration for that. And it's really, the whole thing is just disgusting.
Nothing about this spoke well of McMurphy as a person, McMurphy as a reporter, Stadium as a trustworthy news outlet. I mean, I've done some journalism more significant than sports in my time, and when you had real serious investigative pieces you were doing, you had to run those past editors, management, legal. Like, I can't imagine that this went through a legal department and they went, "Yep, go ahead, tweet that. Yep, sounds good." The liability and the exposure they have on this now is pretty significant. And I'm sure it seemed like a good idea at the time, and I'm sure for McMurphy, he has been working on this, he said, since September, and so that's a pretty significant amount of time to dedicate to it. And if he's been traveling to try and do some of this reporting or whatever, then it's they've got travel expenses too. To dedicate a couple months of your time and come up with nothing as your first big story with this network. I mean, I'm sure he wanted to have something to show them, so he crapped something out. But I cannot fathom the editorial process that this went through. That they went, "Yep, this is good to go. Let's run it."
Was actually his first big story the Amazon shipments from Zach Smith, or was he still at Facebook at that point?
I don't remember. That might have been. I think he ran something on Stadium at some point. It might have been the.
I think it was the Amazon stuff.
It might. Oh well, okay. Well then, in that case, then I think we know everything we need to know about Stadium's editorial policy, because that story was. I think we probably either had the same types of conversations about journalistic ethics about that story. I don't know if it was on the podcast or off air, but I remember having conversations about that at that point as well, because it's the same thing. Like, that's a slightly different discussion, because it's like, okay, if this happened, who cares? None of this materially impacts anything. And you had the same kind of reaction from national people after that one too. Like,
yeah.
Why is this really coming out? Like, why is this actually a thing? Like, it's none of the other than to embarrass Zach Smith. I don't know what the point of that report was. Like, it didn't materially change anything other than paint Zach Smith in a kind of weird, gross light. So, I mean, and if that was your point, or your motive to publish that story, then okay, good job. But if you were trying to accomplish anything else, like, I don't know what you did with that one either.
I like, part of his justification for running this was that when he asked Trayvon Grimes about it, Grimes told him no comment. And so when McMurphy was asked on the radio interview about who has denied it and whatnot, and McMurphy said, well, Grimes didn't deny that it happened, or didn't deny that it didn't happen. So that was like license to go ahead and further run it. Like, he was basically saying, it felt like he was saying, like, if it didn't happen, then Grimes would have told me it didn't happen, and then I wouldn't have run it. But since he didn't tell me that it didn't happen, and also didn't tell him that it did, then, you can still write the story as a, this is what I'm being told. And again, that's when he spent all of this time travel to get the story, and it turns out that you can't write it as a factual thing, then the story has to become about Brett McMurphy's search, which is why when there's there's an expose or like an investigative piece, you're not going to find a lot of I's and me's and I did this and we went to find this and I found this and so they told me this. But yet here, there's all kinds of McMurphy is placed throughout the story. And that's it's his account of somebody else's account, which, as you said, who knows if this is true, and yet here we are, reading it, and even Urban Meyer said he wasn't going to read it, but since he knew he was going to be asked about it, he had to read it so he could speak intelligently about it. And yet then you're just furious by what you read, and the team was furious, and the coaches. And then, Tom, we talked about what if this is the galvanizing thing, and Ryan Day even said Tuesday that it probably does. They're already close, but something like this could bring them closer. And it's maybe Brett McMurphy is the guy who provided the adversity in July. Maybe he is, it comes full circle, and he brings the team all together in November for contenders.
I don't know if it's going to do that, and maybe it will. Maybe this is just one more thing for them to get angry about. I mean, there was a picture on the indoor practice field video screen on Tuesday night of someone waving an Ohio against the world flag at I think it was the Michigan State game. So if that's one of the messages, that it's kind of the bunker mentality, us against the world thing, then that can help get them fired up and focused. I think the broader issue that this will probably help solve is, there were rumors all summer and fall that there was a little bit of a schism between Michael Drake and Gene Smith and Urban Meyer, and oh boy, everyone is rowing in the same direction on this one, and they are in lockstep on this one. So if there was some kind of a divide there between any combination of those men before, it sure seems like they have set whatever may or may not have been the case before aside, because they are all right together on this now.
They all have a common enemy.
Exactly, and that's sometimes that's all it takes.
Are we finished with this topic? Do you have anything left?
I would love to move on. Can we talk about crab pretzels?
Yes, let's talk about the other common enemy. It's Maryland week, everybody, and there's a couple things to know about Maryland. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this on the podcast. They have some interesting press box foods from, I think it was 2014. They had taco meat and just paper bowls, and they called it chili. But this was a noon game, so it was morning. And again, it was taco meat, and you were supposed to just put it in a bowl and eat it. And since we are media, well, that's what we did. And so, you eat the taco meat, and then at halftime, I think they had some spring rolls or something. But there was also, at the concession stand, you could go get, I don't know if it's like a 3-pound or a 4-pound big pretzel, like the size of a pizza, topped with crab. And so Marcus Hartman, who is with the Dayton Daily News now, grabbed one of those, and it almost takes the entire press box to eat one of those things. So there's some good and there's some bad at Maryland. 2016, I don't think they had the taco meat again. So, we'll see. Hopefully, Tom, you get to experience it. It's a noon game, so the breakfast taco meat may be there for you, which would be awesome.
I may just bring a bag of Fritos in my computer bag, and then if we do just get random taco meat, then we can at least make a Texas straw hat and have like an old school Ohio State Commons lunch, and make the best of it. Can't wait.
I'll pack a Bahama Mama in my bag as well, and then we could just Commons it. I believe the pretzel is about like $25 though, so we'd have to go halvesies because that's way out of our budget. Maybe split it 4 ways.
Yeah, we can. I'm sure. I mean, sports writers are not notorious for being cheap or anything, so I'm sure everyone will be willing to throw in a few bucks. It'll be fine.
And then you just take your bite, and then you pass the pretzel on down, right up to your face. Big bite, pass it on down. So Maryland comes into this game 3-4 in conference play, 5-5 overall, looking for a bowl bid with a win. Earlier in the season, before the season, this was viewed as a possible trap game. DJ Durkin, the whole situation there, he's finally been fired, and they've been able to maintain some semblance of flotation. Basically, I mean they're right at the water level. They're 5-5. Now they've lost starting quarterback Kasim Hill, so they go back to Tyrell Pigrome, who was really pretty good at the start of last year. I think he was responsible for beating Texas, if I recall correctly, last year, and has only played a little bit this year. He's more of a running threat. He's a littler guy. So there's that. The defense, Tom talked to Tuesday night about having to face Pigrome instead of Kasim Hill, and there's a little bit of difference. But I'm actually, the Maryland passing game has been so bad this year that I think going to the backup, I don't think that's a bad thing.
No, Maryland's offense has been pretty. I think I've already used the word crappy to describe the reporting in the first segment, so I'm not sure I should use it again here. But it's been McMurphy-ish in the offensively this year. Just looking at some of the advanced stats, the nerd stats that you always like to slag me for, they are 109th in the country in success rate, which is basically consistently gaining yardage, keeping the chains moving, 4 yards on first down, 4 yards on second down, not getting into kind of the 3rd and 8, 2nd and 12 kind of situations. So 109th in the country there, 7th in the country in explosiveness. So they have guys that can they can hurt you if you let them. They have some big play guys. So this is a team that I think it's probably good that Ohio State has maybe probably figured out the safety issue now before they face Maryland. Because if you can keep them from putting up those explosive plays, they're probably not going to just be able to march it down the field on you, string together 6 first downs and punch in a touchdown. That has not been what they've had as an offense this year. If Ohio State can limit them on the big plays, they can probably get them off the field. I mean, to go from Kasim Hill to Tyrell Pigrome at quarterback, this is not a dramatic change. This is not a Dwayne Haskins to a Tate Martell where it's going to be a whole different kind of offense. It's going to be pretty similar to the offense they've had all year, I would think.
And they do have talent, and that was one of the things Robert Landers said. Like every time they play Maryland, there's always really talented skill players out there. And they have that with running back Anthony McFarland. I believe he's a redshirt freshman, but the Buckeyes offered him. They wanted him. He's a quick guy, averaging 72 yards rushing per game, but can go the distance at any point. We've seen Ty Johnson for years. I think did he have a 100-yard kickoff return against the Buckeyes at some point in the last 4 years?
Last year, 2017, he had a touchdown return on a kickoff because that was the year that Ohio State gave up touchdown returns on kickoffs to pretty much everyone.
Yeah, I believe he had 6 in that game. But he's a big play guy. He's never really put it all together. But then they've got some receivers, former Buckeye commit Tavon Jacobs, who has 21 catches this year. The freshman they really like is Deshaun Jones, I think he rushes the ball as well. So there is talent. It's just a matter of the quarterback connecting the ball to them. What I'm interested to see is the tackling in space from the linebackers who have played much better the last couple of weeks, but they've been playing, I'd say, I wanted to say they've been playing opponents more receptive to being tackled, but I wouldn't know. I don't know that would correctly describe Nebraska. It correctly describes Michigan State, but Nebraska will spread them out and make things difficult. Maryland will do that as well. They've got some quick guys, so I want to see how Tough Borland does, how Pete Warner does, how Malik Harrison does in getting these guys down, because there's going to be a lot of motion. Linebackers are going to be moving, safeties are going to be moving, and we'll learn some things like if there are no big plays given up, Tom, this week, I think that would be the biggest news for the defense. If they miss some tackles, whatever, but if there are no big plays from an offense that can make big plays, that would be huge.
Yeah, absolutely. If you miss a tackle, you miss a tackle, and your big goal is to make that missed tackle turn into a 12-yard gain and not an 87-yard gain. Because that's what killed Ohio State at the beginning of the year was you'd have a guy out of position, or you'd miss a tackle, and all of a sudden there was no one back there to make the play. And it seems like that has gotten corrected a little bit in the last couple weeks. You haven't seen quite as many of those big plays, the crossing routes, or the little, like the little post route that KJ Hamler ran for Penn State against Sean Wade, where he just got inside of Wade, got Wade opened up a little bit, Hamler got inside him, and then Isaiah Pryor just didn't do what he was supposed to do on the back end, and all of a sudden 87 or 93 or whatever it was yards later, you've given up a touchdown. You can give up 12-yard completions, you can give up 15-yard completions. I wouldn't recommend doing it every play, but you can do it occasionally. That isn't what kills you. It's the 80-yard touchdowns, the 90-yard touchdowns, even the 50-yard touchdowns. Like that's the stuff that you can't see them continue to do. You definitely did not see it against Michigan State. Michigan State was not a very good offense, but that represented a pretty significant step. So if you see that again this week against Maryland, yes, this is not a team that's loaded with talent like Michigan is, or like, someone you might play in the Rose Bowl or in the college football playoff will be. But if you can, Ohio State has given up big plays to teams that were not exactly loaded with talent earlier this year as well. They got scorched by Oregon State. They got scorched by Minnesota. I mean, they rather notably gave up 49 points to Purdue, and Purdue just scored 10 points against Minnesota. So the quality of the opponent was not necessarily something that impacted whether or not Ohio State got toasted earlier this year. So if they keep those big plays under control this week against Maryland, yeah, that for sure, that's a pretty significant sign for them.
I'm looking at their total offense performances this season for Maryland. Temple held them to 195 yards. Texas held them to 407. Michigan had them at 220. Iowa at 115. Illinois allowed 712 yards to them. Michigan State held them to 100 yards. And then Indiana was back up to 542 yards. Ohio State needs to be closer to that Michigan State number than the Indiana number. And if they're closer to that Indiana number, that's not good news.
Don't be Indiana and don't be Illinois is generally pretty good advice, just if you're a football team. So just go ahead and write that down. That's worth remembering, not just in this circumstance, but pretty much always.
Maryland rushed for 444 yards against Bowling Green, 315 against Minnesota, 290 against Rutgers, 431 against Illinois, and 353 against Indiana. Against Iowa, it was 68. Michigan State, it was 26. They put up 147 on Michigan. I'm going to guess there's a long run in there somewhere. They also scored 21 points on Michigan. I don't remember how, but being around 220 yards would be a heck of an accomplishment for the Buckeyes. It's still too early for me to believe, but what we have seen has been better. And Greg Schiano said Tuesday night, he was asked if the linebackers were playing better the last couple of weeks, but I was waiting for this answer because I knew it was coming, because he's been a fan of the linebackers all season long. And he's like, I'm, one of the few who thinks they've been playing well the entire time and they're getting better. And maybe they, I assume they are. They're grading out as champions, which they haven't always done this season. And this will be an interesting test because they won't have to worry so much about the passing game, and they can just focus on how well can you tackle in space against these fast little dudes, and what happens when you get in the backfield and now you're up against a quarterback that can move a little bit. Just how sound are they? They've been focused on it all week in practice because they focused on it last week and they performed well with tackling. So they're gonna you get what your results. Your results are you get what you practice. What is it, Tom?
Sure, yeah.
I believe those are exactly Urban Meyer's words. That's part of the plan to win. You sure? Just yeah.
I believe the exact phrase is "Okay, cool, hook 'em."
You get what you emphasize.
All right, we'll go with that.
Or okay, cool, hook 'em. Gosh, what a week it's been. So
we have some major breaking news this on Tuesday evening regarding the Ohio State-Michigan game. Ohio State is wearing alternate jerseys, which is not really a surprise. The major breaking news portion of this is that I am 100% okay with these because these are the Nike, they should be wearing these all the time. Why don't you wear these all the time template, which is what they wore in the playoff in 2014. It is an homage to the 1968 national championship team with the gray shoulder stripes and the black numbers on top like they had in 1968, and then they wore all in 1993 as a throwback. And on the 25th anniversary of that national championship season, they wore them, and they're wearing them again now for the 50th anniversary, which just struck me that it was as long from 1968 to 1993 as it was from 1993 till right now, and now I feel 1,000,000 years old.
I don't consider these throwback uniforms. I consider these the uniforms.
Right. This is what they should be wearing all the time, and at some point, Nike, supposedly Urban prefers the current shoulder stripe, which is a terrible, terrible lapse in judgment, but that's what they wore when he was here in the 1980s, so whatever. But yeah, this is what they should wear all the time because the school colors are not scarlet and black and white. The school colors are scarlet and gray, and the uniforms should reflect that. Get off my lawn.
I was going to say, do you mind if I just walk across your lawn to get to my lawn? My dog, he's just going to sniff around. If he poops, I'll be back later. I'll get it. Don't worry. And then maybe me and the kids, the neighborhood kids, are going to play a little football on your lawn. That's all. Just a little football. And if it starts raining, it might get a little muddy, but is that okay? Do you mind?
Yeah, no. I think I have made the "you on my lawn" point clearer. I'm not sure how much more clear I can make it.
Get off my lawn! All right, old man Orr doesn't want us playing football on his lawn, guys. Let's go play some stickball in the streets. The Maryland defense. Do you know anything about it?
I do know something about it. That is, dear listener, what you call a lifeline, because that was Gerd going, "Oh, I forgot to watch the other half. Oh no!"
I just fast forwarded through that part.
Yes. Yes, they are a remarkably average team on defense. Like in every phase of defense, they are just kind of like, yeah, they're not great, they're not terrible, they're just kind of. I mean, on offense, I talked about the consistently moving the chains. They're 109th or 107th in the country in success rate. Explosive plays, they're 7th. So they're really good unless they're really bad. And then in defensive S&P plus, they're 55th, which is pretty much smack dab right in the middle of the country. Just in overall S&P plus on defense. They are 36th in success rate, which is like, yeah, that's a little above average. Not great, but a little above average. So that's, can you keep the ball moving? Can you keep the chains moving? They're a little above average in keeping you from doing that. Explosiveness, 48th in the country. So that's pretty much right in the middle. 55th in the country against the rush, 40th against the pass. So it's just kind of like, yeah, it's fine. It's not, they're not going to blow you away. They're not going to be Rutgers. It's just, yeah, it's fine. Like, it's not, there's nothing remarkable other than the fact that it's so unremarkable.
I think what I may find remarkable is they haven't given up 500 yards total offense in the game yet this year. Michigan was at 465. Illinois was at 493. But I guess it tells you that they haven't played very many good offenses. And I'm going to assume the weather, I think, is supposed to be pretty good. I heard a couple days ago in the 50s for kickoff. We'll see. But I'm going to assume this is going to be the first game where they give up over 500 yards of total offense. You look at the rushing, they gave up 224 to Iowa, 232 to Illinois, 269 to Michigan State. If you give up 269 yards rushing to Michigan State, Ohio State should be able to do that number if they want to, if they put their mind to it.
I mean, that's a nice day.
It's a pretty nice day, Tom. Passing yards, they'll give up yards to passing teams. Michigan threw for 294, and they'll even give up yards to teams that aren't passing teams. They give up 261 to Illinois. So this is, like you said, it's an average defense. I thought it was interesting today, Tuesday, on the Big Ten teleconference. Jeff Brom was asked what's the best way? How did they set about making life difficult for Dwayne Haskins? And he said you have to blitz him. You have to make him uncomfortable. You have to affect him in some way. And they did that. But Tom, he also threw for a school record in that game. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. He did set the school record against Purdue. That's all I remember from that game. I assume it went really well.
The best way to stop Dwayne Haskins is to stop the running game and then to have a slot receiver on your team who is named Rondale Moore, who is unstoppable, untackleable against Ohio State, but is slightly above average against everybody else. That's the key to stopping Dwayne Haskins.
Yeah, I think it worked out well. I mean, and now he gets to go live in Louisville. So, I mean, that's not official yet. But if you watched his press conference where he went, "Oh no, I'm not here to talk about that today."
Yeah.
Okay, so enjoy your new job.
Yep. Do you think would it be tampering for us to talk about Rondale Moore transferring?
I don't think we're actually officially part of the program. So yes, I think that would probably be okay for us to do that. I don't think it would be an NCAA violation.
Good, because we're not. Yeah, it will be interesting to see what happens there if he does leave and abandons Purdue and what players do there, and maybe Tim Beckman will come out of the blue and start trying to recruit players from Purdue to wherever he is now, as he is wont to do.
I think he's with Nationwide Insurance right now. So
I was going to say Tim Hortons.
Oh, even better. Yes.
Come try our Tim bits.
Made with real bits of Tim.
All right. I got nothing for that. I can't top that. It feels like this is a game where, you know how Michigan State's offense set up well for the Ohio State defense. They didn't. For one, they didn't have a quarterback who could do anything, and they didn't really have receivers, and they didn't really have running backs. So that was a good matchup for Ohio State. The Maryland defense is not inadequate, so that's also a good test for Ohio State. And it might not be inadequate to the point where, like, Ohio State will try to stick to the run like they've done the last couple of weeks to wear the defense down, and they don't need to throw. Kevin Wilson has talked about that before, where they abandon the run too early. And Maryland's defense will allow them, you would think, allow the Ohio State offense to do what they want, or to be able to do what they want. But they're going to have to just go ahead and stick with the run for a while, get everybody going, because Tom, you're going to need it next week. And I think you still have to continue to build the confidence up of that offensive line and that running back and those running backs, and have them have that momentum going into the Michigan game where they feel like we can run through anybody. So if they, I don't, other than tiring the guys out, 45, 50 rushes between three running backs, I don't think would be a bad thing, except they don't really have a third running back. So I don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah, but I think that you're right in that that's probably what they're going to try and establish. They're going to try and establish basically what they want to do against Michigan and kind of prove to themselves as sort of a proof of concept that, yep, this works. Because this is, if Michigan is playing on Heisman level, this is playing Michigan on varsity level. Right. It's like, we talked Tuesday night before interviews. This is kind of the poor man's Michigan in a lot of ways. The defense is fine. It's not great. I mean, the Michigan defense is one of the best in the country. This one's fine. But the Michigan offense is a better version with better players of the Maryland offense in some ways. I mean, the Michigan is much better throwing the ball, but that's fine. I mean, it's a decent preparation and a decent barometer for where they are. And running the ball is such an attitude thing. I mean, Ryan Day and Mike Weber both kind of talked about that on Tuesday night a little bit, that they've sort of gotten away from the RPOs. Ryan Day didn't say they've totally gotten away from the RPOs, but just sort of running downhill, establishing the run, running hard, blocking hard, saying go get that dude, go assert your will. I mean, it's sort of the most meathead possible interpretation of football, but it's what they've been doing the last couple weeks, and it's working. I mean, it's not working great. I mean, they ran for 100. You see the kind of you see the top line numbers against Michigan State, and it's like, oh wow, Mike Weber ran for 100 yards against this great Michigan State defense. Wow, everything's fixed. And you look at the yards per play numbers, and they rushed for 2.7 yards per play. And sacks are part of that, and okay, but they got outgained by Michigan State 4.2 to 4.1 on a yards per play basis. So it's not fixed, but it looks like a representative Ohio State rushing attack in some ways now, which is not something you could have said earlier in the year. And they're going to need that if they want to beat Michigan.
Yeah, but I see Mike Weber rushing for 100 yards as way more something to focus on more than like the 120 total that they rushed for. It showed to me that they could consistently get enough yards to keep moving, and there weren't a lot of 3 and outs in the second half when he was running the ball. Although, like we said after the game, it was maybe the quietest 100 yards you've ever seen, because I assumed he was somewhere in the 70s. But it showed to me that they could pound the ball when the defense knows that it's coming. A very good defense, and Mike Weber was consistent enough. And that's 2 weeks in a row now. J.K. Dobbins did it against Nebraska. Mike Weber did it against Michigan State. They have these two guys who have been there, who have been able to close teams out, and that's a luxury. You know, you're lucky to have one of those guys, and the offensive line has been doing it with them. So they're maybe coming into their own at the right time, even though they're still not putting up 350 yards like we've seen them explode for at times. And maybe this is the week they do it. The RPOs you mentioned, somebody on the forum asked, how much has that affected Dwayne Haskins when you take away the RPOs? And I think that's responsible for some of his number shortages, like throwing for 250, 220 or whatever. Conditions, I think, also come down to that. But I also think just to focus on the run, when they're running more, the RPOs are, when those are gone, those are throws. So you take away those. I think Urban said maybe like 10 passes on average is what that turns out to be. So, that's going to be 70, 80 yards based on how those are short, quick passes. So I don't know how much it affects his overall play. It affects his numbers, obviously, but I do think the RPO allows a guy to get into a rhythm, but it's more important for the offensive line to be comfortable doing what they're doing than for a quarterback to be in more of a rhythm when he should already, be in a rhythm as the quarterback. And you can't just worry about actually just being in that rhythm when you've got guys coming flying at you. So I think it's more important for the offensive line to be comfortable with what they're doing, Tom, than getting 80 extra yards passing for your quarterback.
Yeah, I think that there's a pretty good argument to be made that you shouldn't have to worry about your offensive line in RPOs, and that's not something that should impact them as much as it seemingly has this year.
I agree.
But this is one of those things where you don't mold your players to your scheme, you mold your scheme to your players. If you have guys who just aren't comfortable with that, can't get comfortable with that, can't function with that, then sorry, you got to make it work with the guys you have. You don't get to, this is not the NFL where you get to cut guys in the middle of the season and pick people up off the waiver wire. You've got the team you have right now, and if this is an issue, then you just have to make it work with whatever's working for them. So if taking the RPOs out of the offense, or like I said, Day talked about the fact that it was not out, but it was less of an emphasis, I think, was basically the overall gist of it. If that's what it takes to get the offensive line to push guys off the ball and be able to run the ball and have running backs running hard, then whatever. Do what you got to do. Just you have to be able to run the ball. Whatever you have to do do it.
I'm with you. Let's go ahead and go to listener questions because that continues our Maryland talk, it looks like.
First question from @Fairfax Buckeye. About Maryland, expect a look ahead to Michigan, or will the team be focused on the Terps?
There are a few players asked about that Tuesday night. They all said exactly what you would expect them to say, is that they're focused on Maryland. I think I think you need to be focused on what Maryland can do, and the Buckeye defense has seen that over the last few years. So I think they'll be aware. I also think the offense wants to keep that momentum. So I don't know, the look ahead. I think it's real, but they're always so focused on today, and win the big screen inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. Says win the moment. So they're doing everything they can to make sure that doesn't happen. So they're trying to keep everything focused on right now, and then Michigan will happen Saturday afternoon, Saturday night.
Right. I mean, the message is the video board said laser focus, which is the same message it had after the Iowa game last year when, in that Iowa game, the coaching staff said, my focus might have been a little bit of an issue. So after that Iowa game, that video board said laser focus, and it said the same thing again this week. And they did not have an issue getting laser focused last year after the Iowa game. That was enough of a kick in the butt that they did get focused and did do what they needed to do against Michigan State the following week and kind of carried that out for the rest of the year. I think that the coaching staff, I think that reflects the fact that was up there. I think that reflects that the coaching staff is aware that could be an issue because it's not. This is the classic sandwich game on a schedule. You come off of a road game against a team that you kind of had circled all year, big win. You have a look ahead spot to another, your big major arch rival, division, potential conference, potential college football playoff berth on the line. This is the classic trap sandwich game in between those. And, the second road game in a row. There's just a lot about this game that sets up for it to be a trap game, for it to be a look ahead game. The coaching staff is going to do everything they can, and everyone's saying the right stuff tonight. But I think that can you remember any time during the last 2 years when they've said we had a bad week of practice? It's always a good week of practice, and even after the Purdue game, after the Iowa game last year, Urban Meyer talked about the fact that he felt they had a good week of practice. So you're not going to know until, and frankly, probably they're not going to know until 12:30 or 1 o'clock on Saturday when you see it looks like it should look or it doesn't look like it should look.
You would hope that knowing that they can't afford another loss, that you don't overlook anybody and that you go in serious about that opponent. And then I don't know why they would have to look ahead to Michigan anyway. They've won every game since 2012, so it's like, who cares?
Yeah, what does that game matter anyway?
Right.
Yeah, I think that there's a very, 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 very good chance that Michigan spent an awful lot of last week before Rutgers practicing Ohio State stuff because they came out of the gate real slowly against Rutgers, and this is the kind of thing where if you can just beat the brakes off a team without having to think a whole lot, you can look ahead a little bit if you're Michigan. And Ohio State probably is practicing some stuff this week that won't necessarily get used during the game, that may get used during the Michigan game. But Maryland is not Rutgers. I mean, they get lumped together a lot because they're both bad, scandal-ridden programs that have no business in the Big Ten. But Maryland is Rutgers with a pulse, and you cannot treat Maryland like they're Rutgers because they're rich man's Rutgers. Which I mean, they're also broke, so it's not great. But you can't sleepwalk against Maryland like you could against Rutgers.
Maryland is actual people.
Let's not go crazy. Next one from Lisa Simpson's boyfriend, Langdon Alder. Dwayne Haskins running hard in the same game he knew Tate Martell would be playing. That's not a question, but...
it was actually something that I wrote down earlier, and then I forgot to put it in the form of a question. I see that as I'm reading it now. Do you think that's a coincidence? That and then, of course, Langdon Alder is my pen name in podcast questions.
I think it's probably a little bit of a coincidence because you didn't actually see him run. You didn't see him run in any of those goal line situations. I mean, I'm going back to the series where Tate Martell came in for the first time when it was scoreless in the second quarter right before halftime. Tate Martell comes in, runs from the 6 down to the 1. Second down, they swap Martell back out. Haskins comes back in. They give it to J.K. Dobbins up the middle, and you just see both outside linebackers from Michigan State, or I don't know if they're safeties or outside linebackers or what. They both just crash so hard because there's just no pretense at all that Haskins is going to run. So I don't put a ton of stock in that because I mean maybe this is maybe the quarterback running the ball once is the big Michigan wrinkle that they're saving, and they don't, they only broke it out against TCU and Michigan or something. But I don't put a ton of stock in
I
that.
think what Langdon Alger was talking about was the run down the sidelines where he lowered his shoulder on a play that was called back. And after the game, Haskins said he was salty about that play being called back. So Tom, you may dismiss it, but I think while it may not involve Tate Martell, he definitely hears people talking about how he doesn't run, he doesn't want contact. This comes 1 week after his slide early when he was asked about that when he slid, with about 7 yards between him and the nearest defender. So he hears it. I think that has more to do with his decision to put his head down on that one particular play and no other plays. We'll see if he has any more of those, but I think we'll see him running harder the rest of the season. I don't know what that means in terms of yardage. It may not mean anything, but I think he's heard the noise and he's going to try to prove people wrong at least a little bit.
Maybe Langdon Alger should learn to be more specific with his questions and also phrase them in the form of a question in the future.
Maybe he should also, take more time and rather than just copying and pasting, actually adding a comma and maybe a question mark.
Maybe. Dare to dream.
But don't, yeah, exactly.
Next one from Buckeye Hotep. Do you think the Penn State game was Ben Victor's version of Noah Brown's Oklahoma game from a couple years ago, as in one great performance, then a bunch of meh?
That's a pretty, it's the very poor man's version of Noah Brown's 4-touchdown game, or semi-poor man. But it's been interesting. I forgot to look at the snap numbers, but Victor's snaps haven't really gone up so much, and Terry McLaurin's playing that, getting a lot of those snaps. Chris Olave is in there now. So it's clear that they don't feel like they can rely on him as much as they did Austin Mack, who they felt could do no wrong, basically, with the blocking and the catching. And you wonder, and we've seen Ben Victor blocking, and it hasn't been great at times this year. He's had some good ones, but there are also times where he looks like, he's like, I came into this room. What did I come into this room for? And then he has to backtrack and go back out to the kitchen and then come back into the dining room. He's like, yes, blocking. Oh, there's the whistle. So there have been instances like that where you don't have that with Terry McLaurin. So I think that's why maybe the snaps aren't as high as you would expect. But yeah, I think that's a fairly fair analogy. You?
Yeah, it's not, like you said, this was not a 4-touchdown game. He made one play, and it was a heck of a play, but he made one play. He's someone that I think a lot of people have been sort of waiting to put it all together, and you keep seeing, you look at his frame, and he's big, he can go up and get it. He seems like the kind of player that should be an impact player. You keep kind of hearing, oh, it's coming. He's really turned the corner. After the Penn State game, you heard, oh, he's really putting it all together now. You really can see that he's really putting it all together now, and it just never quite happens. So it's still too early to write him off. He's still got at least one more year, right? 2 more years? 1 more year? I don't remember whether he redshirted.
One more year after this year.
1 more year after this year. Okay. So he still has another year, but with Austin Mack out, it is right on a platter for him to step up and take that job and really, really assert himself and make the most of the opportunity. And it just hasn't happened. And you see other guys kind of jumping over him now, and he has another year, so you can't completely write him off. But at some point he has to put it together, or he becomes one of those great what if, like, what if only this guy had put it all together, he would have been really remarkable, and it just never happened. He's not there yet, but you can see it from here.
Yeah, exactly. And he was he was an Orr co-starter with Austin Mack last year. But there has been no Orr this year. That's Austin Mack's position. And even, they rotate, so, Victor would play, but there's no Orr when it comes to Austin Mack and Ben Victor. And he hasn't taken the ownership like they wanted him to. And now it's up for grabs, and it's not a great time for things to be up for grabs. but it helps to have somebody like Terry McLaurin who's going to do things correctly. And then when you've got a kid like Chris Olave coming on and really looked pretty good last week, had a pretty awesome catch over the middle, outstretched with a little bit of yards after the catch when he got hit. Took a nice hit, lowered his head, and prepared himself. And looking forward to seeing more from him. We'll actually talk to him for the first time Wednesday night. We'll see how this year has gone for him. But he obviously has a bright future. But yeah, it would be nice to see more from Benjamin Victor. But you wonder if, like, at this point, has he, and they would never say this, but has he topped out? Will it ever come together? It's almost like he's the uninjured version of Drew Carter.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of potential, and Drew Carter was flashing that potential, and then he got hurt. You wonder, like, you could have been, there could have been more, and he was an NFL guy for a while too. And I still think, Victor has a ways to go to be an NFL receiver.
Yeah, I don't think there's much argument there. If you're not getting on the field as a starter at Ohio State, you're probably not going to be an NFL guy for too long. While you were talking, I found snap counts for Victor. 59 against Purdue, which is a lot. That was his high on the season. But last couple weeks with Austin Mack out, back to 25 and 26 against Nebraska and Michigan State. And the most interesting thing is if you go back to last year, 2017, he was in on 46.4% of snaps. So pretty close to 50-50. This year, 36.5. He's playing a lower percentage of snaps this year than he did last year. And Austin Mack was out a little bit last year with he had the head injury at one point, and Austin Mack now with the foot injury has missed time this year. So it is at most kind of a pretty parallel comparison, and he's playing less as a junior than he did as a freshman. That's not a great trend. All right, next one from @JG Buckeye. Would there be any way Gene Smith can pull Ohio State football from ESPN broadcasts? As in, I'm not sending the team on the field if ESPN is broadcasting the game. Short answer, no. Long answer, you could probably, but you would violate all sorts of your TV contracts and be passing up. What do they get from TV contracts? $40 million a year right now? Something like that. So, yeah, you could do that, but you would have a whole stadium full of angry people and violate your $40 million a year TV contract, and probably, I think the Ohio State and the Big Ten has a media grant of rights, which means you sign over your media rights to the conference. So I guess actually technically, now that I think about it, no, since the media has the conference has the TV rights, he could do that, but his team would just forfeit the game. So yes, you could, but no, you probably won't see that.
You don't have any principles, Tom?
Someone's got to pay for that shiny new stadium suites and the shiny new Covelli Arena, and it is paid for with TV money and butts in the seats.
Paying for the same old eggs and sausage for noon games since forever. Go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
I have made it a point to not complain about free food. That is one of my.
You're so correct.
One of my life things. This is me living my best life. Next one from @Checks1878 is Brett McMurphy Satan's cousin. I mean, I feel like we kind of covered this in the opening segment of the show, but I'll let you provide a little additional detail if you'd like.
This is a horrific question. How dare somebody put this on here? You should be ashamed for making this part of the show, whoever you are. I won't even dignify this with an answer. But have you ever seen them together? So maybe they're,
Next one from This is like when you set me up with a question that you don't want to answer, and you're like, so what do you think about this controversial thing, Tom? And why? And listeners, I'm sure you've noticed that as well. Gerd does a very good job structuring the show that
Thank
way.
you.
So you're welcome. So good job on the second question.
Job on the Satan question.
Next one from @Antonimol. Why should Ohio State be afraid of the Michigan defense if it's exactly the same as it was last year? You can answer this from you watch all the Michigan games, and then I can go through the statistical stuff a little bit.
Well, here's the thing. It doesn't matter if the Michigan defense is exactly the same. It's the Ohio State offense is very different. And that's what you have to worry about. And the Michigan defense, if it was exactly the same, it's still pretty good now. It's not. The inside guys have changed. There's been some there's been changes here and there, but it's pretty much the same defense. But what did Ohio State do against that defense last year? I mean, it was never easy, and that was with JT Barrett, who has been an instrumental part of finding rushing yards for the Ohio State offense against Michigan. Mike Weber was able to close it out last year, so that's similar. But I think I don't know if there's a false sense of confidence based on what Dwayne Haskins was able to do against Michigan last year, but Ohio State put up 350 yards of total offense last year against Michigan, and if they do that this year, that's going to be a tough one to win because Michigan has an offense, and that's the other thing. Michigan's defense is the same; their offense is better, so you're going to need to score, or you're going to need to be better on offense, I think, than you were last year. The 31 points. Was there any defensive touchdowns in there, Tom?
I don't think so. No.
It was just a methodical offense, and then you've got there's three. Haskins came in and led them on 3 drives. One was a touchdown, one was a missed field goal, and another was a field goal. They weren't prepared for that. They weren't prepared for Dwayne Haskins. They'll be more prepared for him this year. That's also a significant thing. So even if it's the same defense, they have more information now than they did then. So you should not be overconfident in the Ohio State offense, but you should be confident that they have gotten better. And let's not make Michigan bigger and better than they are, because there are teams have had some successes. Now there's the most yards they've given up this year is 319 yards to SMU, so that doesn't even really count. 302 yards to Notre Dame in a loss. You have to hopefully, you hope your defense contains the Michigan offense in a point similar to the Michigan State, where if you can get to a point where your defense is good enough that 21 points can win the game, I think you have to feel pretty good about Ohio State's chances to score those 21. Tom, I just don't know if they can hold them under 21. And I'm not right there yet that they can even score 21, but I think things are trending better for Ohio State than they were 3 weeks ago.
This is definitely a game you should feel more confident about as an Ohio State fan than you did after, say, the Purdue game. But there's still stuff to worry about. I think, you went through the fact that Michigan was clearly not prepared for Haskins last year. When Barrett went out, there was a scene in the Amazon series that they produced last year about the Michigan season, and they had a clip of Rashawn Gary and Chase Winovich talking on the sideline, and they said, "Who's coming in?" And they didn't know who the backup quarterback is. And they said, "Oh, number 7." They didn't know his name. Said, "Oh, we're gonna get his." That was the conversation on the sideline. That was about it. But they were prepared for a different Ohio State offense than what they got when Haskins came in. You have seen the difference between a JT Barrett offense and a Dwayne Haskins offense. It is not the same thing. So they had spent all week preparing for one thing, and then they got another. So if you have the luxury of preparing for a Dwayne Haskins offense all season, that's going to you're going to be better prepared. Statistically, just going through them real quick, they are second overall in defense this year. They were 10th last year. Basically the same in success rate, a little bit better in explosiveness, 16th this year versus 24th last year. basically the same against the rush, basically the same against the pass. I mean, 6th against the rush, 4 against the pass. I mean, this is a very, very, very good defense. So the other thing that I think is something that is a difference between this year and last year, Ohio State's offensive line is not as good this year as it was last year. That's an issue. You do not have a Jamarco Jones out there this year. You don't have a Billy Price out there this year. You got Michael Jordan at center instead of guard this year. The line is not as good as it has been. And if you're going against a very, very, very good defense, and especially a very good run defense and a very good pass rushing defense, it's going to come down to your offensive line. That is why you should be worried more than the Michigan defense. The Michigan defense is if you want to say it's the same defense as last year, that's fine. But it is not the same Ohio State offensive line lining up across from that Michigan defense. And that is something you probably should be concerned about if you're an Ohio State fan.
Yeah, and Haskins rushed for 24 yards in that game against Michigan last year. That's a career high 24 yards still. This year he has rushed for 34 yards, and that was with a career high tying 24 yards against Oregon State. So they are going to be much more prepared and ready for Dwayne Haskins. And like Jeff Brown said, you got to blitz him to affect him. And we know, Tom, that Michigan is going to come after him a lot and with heavy equipment.
Yeah, they will bring the pressure, and that means Ohio State has to do a better job of picking up the blitzes than they have, and they've got to have receivers who can get open quick so he can get the ball out quick. And Michigan has very, very, very good corners, so you're not necessarily going to be able to rely on your outside receivers to get open. So it's going to be a challenge, and they're going to have to get it figured out pretty quickly. They have the offensive line issues that you've seen have all come against defenses not as good as Michigan. So that is something to be concerned about for next week. But we're not here to talk about Michigan. We're here to talk about Maryland. It's Maryland week. Come on, it's all anyone should be thinking about right now anyway. Speaking of Maryland week, final question from @PupJoe3. I'm going to read it verbatim. Would an improved running game or run defense help OSU more when they face UM? Now, since it is Maryland week, I assume he means Maryland, right? What else could he mean? It's Maryland week.
I think against Maryland, I think Ohio State's improved a run defense would help them more. But I'm guessing this question is about Michigan, in which case the answer for me is obviously an improved running game. If, as we know, if you average more yards per carry than the opponent, you're going to win in this game. And if the Ohio State running game is improved, and that's what you need above maybe all else. And stopping Michigan's run, that's what they're going to focus on. But they could do that, and still, if they're not running the ball, they're still going to lose, Tom.
Yep, that's exactly right. You have to be able to run the ball to win the game, and you have to be able to run the ball to keep Michigan's pass rush off of Dwayne Haskins. You have to. I think this is actually a relatively easy question, and I think that really you could feel, if you were going to feel more confident about one of those two, I think you would probably right now feel more confident about Ohio State's defensive chances against the Michigan run game than you would about the Ohio State offense's chances of running the ball against Michigan. I think that's probably the bigger area of concern right now, is how is Ohio State going to run the ball, and that's the answer that they need more than the other one.
Yep, and so that's going to do it for this show. When we talk to you next, it is going to officially be Michigan week, and Michigan week begins at 0:00 of the game clock after the game against Maryland. So that's when Michigan week begins. We will be coming to you soon after that game, soon after the Maryland game, to give you our instant reaction. We'll probably talk some Maryland, but we've got a lot of things planned for Michigan week, some shows, extra shows, bonus content, things of that nature. I want to thank those of you who have sent in reviews and your ratings, and let us know that you're listening, that you appreciate the show. Guys like Hunter, Randy, Suncard19, Crutch31, Two Token, Troy, who likes the show because there's no foul language, and Tom, a little bit ago you said a foul word, but you were quoting somebody, so it was okay.
It was the A word. You know what? I can go back and bleep it. I'll do that. I will go back and bleep it because you know what? These are the services we provide for you, dear listener. And really, if you think about it, it was Rashawn Gary's fault anyway.
That's true. Let's blame everything. You might be blaming more on him next week too. So we do appreciate those ratings, those reviews. It helps us get seen. And when I say that, for a while, Tom, for maybe a day, we were number 32 on the iTunes list of college podcasts. And I felt, for the first time ever, I felt pretty good about myself. I told my wife, and it didn't really mean anything to her, but I'm finding some self-worth from this iTunes thing. So we appreciate that if you can keep that up. And like we're doing, I'm gonna once we get some more of these, I'll go ahead and randomly pick 3 or 4 out. I'll get a hold of those people, or they can get a hold of me. We'll figure it out, and then I'll send you guys a copy of the trilogy, the story of the 2014 postseason. However, when you do review the show, don't make mention of you being bribed to review the show, because that might get us in trouble with iTunes. And right now, like I said, they're the only thing that's giving me self-worth.
Don't take this away from Gurr. This is all that he has.
Yeah.
One thing, we're going to do this. This is going to be like a Willy Wonka golden ticket thing, because we mentioned last week how the Michigan State press box does its food, where they have food tickets and you get a certain number of food tickets. I ended up at the end of the game with 1 extra food ticket that was unused. So someone will have a Michigan State food ticket attached to their book who wins. So it won't get you into a chocolate factory, but it may get you a bratwurst if you ever find yourself in the Michigan State press box. So, I mean, that's a pretty good prize.
Yeah, and if you can get to the counter before security gets you out of there, then just be careful. Like if you get the brat and then security sees you, don't eat and run. You will choke. So you have to just put it in your pocket, get escorted out, and then you eat when it's freezing outside, because that's all it ever is at Michigan State from my experience there.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll maybe we'll come up with some other fun prizes if we have extra game programs or something from this year, or something like that. We'll come up with some fun stuff to throw in there as well. So we do greatly appreciate all of your support, but we spend hours and hours doing this every week, and we're asking you for 3 minutes, so it doesn't seem like that bad of a trade from your perspective.
It's not. And so make sure you check out the rest of the shows on the Ozone Radio Network. Monday with the Buckeye Sleepcast, Tuesday with the Silver Bullets podcast, Wednesday you've got us, Thursday you've got Sons of Schmidt, Friday is the Sloopcast again, and then Saturday we're coming to you live from No Longer Bird Stadium in Maryland, and it's a fun road trip except for all of the long hours it takes to get there. But we will see you then. Thank you for listening, and we will talk to you later.
We could steal a car and